Step 5 is read the question very, very, very carefully. There's an acronym that NEBOSH tutors often use. It's not one that I've used, it's a little bit rude for my liking, but the acronym is RTFQ, which is read the something question. Because NEBOSH tutors come across this all the time. People failing exams, and then they look at the answers that they've submitted and they go, you didn't RTFQ, and you certainly didn't ATFQ, which stands for answer the something question. It's like you've gone off and answered a different question, which is not ideal because you will only get marks for things which are on the marking scheme. We've talked about marking schemes earlier in another tutorial, but there are things on the marking scheme which are relevant to this question. Anything that's not on that marking scheme does not get marks. NEBOSH have been accused unfairly, most of the time, maybe not all of the time, but most of the time, quite unfairly, been accused of writing unfair or unclear questions. Right, no. Right. They've got a plain English award. They write in plain English, most of the time. No one's perfect. Their questions are written by someone and then reviewed by someone and reviewed by someone. It goes through whole committees, several rounds of tweaking to try and get that question to be as simple and as clear as possible. And the question is signposting you. It points you towards the answers, hopefully. So they've put a lot of effort in there. Now, is it perfect? No, but I'll tell you this. You try writing an exam question. When I became an examiner for the very first time, the first thing they got us new examiners to do was to write an exam question and a mark scheme, and then get the person next to us to write an answer for it. And then we could mark their answer. And it was always hilarious to see how the person next to us had completely misinterpreted the question and had given an answer that was completely different to the one we expected. And that wasn't their fault. No, it was our fault because we wrote the question in a way which was a bit unclear. And it really did hammer home how difficult it is to write an exam question which can be correctly interpreted by everybody. NEBOSH do their absolute best on this, and I can't see how they could do it any better, to be honest, most of the time. Look at what the words mean. If you don't know what the word means, you're going to have to use a dictionary. Use Google and look it up. What does the word mean? And I literally do mean use Google and look it up. Let's take a look at an exam question. So here we've got one. So firstly, they've got a few things here. Each question is in a task. So here we have task 7, determining the benefits of inspections. Now that's not the question, but that is giving you the topic of the question, which can be useful because that directs you to the appropriate place in your course materials where that topic is talked about. Hopefully that's a topic you're familiar with and you know roughly where that is. So this is about the benefits of inspections. And then we have a question and we have a number after the question. We have this number 15. What does that mean? Well, 15 is the number of marks available for this question. Generally speaking, there is 1 mark available for every correct technical point which you properly discuss in your answer. It says it in the instructions here. It says, in general, 1 mark is given for each correct technical point that is clearly demonstrated. Not every one of your answers is going to be correct, by the way. Some of your answers might not get marks. So it's useful to add some more points. Maybe you want to put down 20 different points when trying to get the full 15 marks here. So we've got the 15 marks, and then underneath it we've got what we call a stem. Now I'm going to talk about the stems in more detail in another video, but a stem is some additional instructions which are there to help you, not confuse you, they're there to help you. This particular stem says, note, you should support your answer, where applicable, using relevant information from the scenario. Now, we are going to talk about the P principle later on, which is the structure of your answers, point, evidence, and explanation. This stem is telling us that we need to use the P principle. We need to be using evidence. So we're going to make at least 15 points, maybe 20 points, and each of those points is going to be supported by evidence from the scenario. And we'll complete the P principle by adding a little bit of extra explanation as to what makes this a benefit. Why is it a benefit? So let's read the question, word for word. So the first word we have, which is super important here, is the word how. How. It's only a small 3-letter word, how. That's super important. This is the command word. And I will discuss. Now, if you're on YouTube, you don't have access to the full tutorial, but if you're a Compassa student Right next to you, right on the side here, on the left-hand side, you've got videos discussing all of the command words and what they mean. But let's have a quick look at what the word how means. So we'll just type in how meaning. How meaning. The adverb how most commonly means in what way or to what extent. Like how is or what is something like. How is, how meaning. What is the meaning of the word how? We can look at various dictionary definitions. In what way or what manner, by what means, how did it happen, to what extent, to what degree, in what manner. So it's kind of getting at a mechanism, a process, a step-by-step process. So how? So what is the process? What is the way? In what manner? That's what it's getting at. So in what manner? In what way? Could. Could's an important word here. Could. It's not did. That would be very different, wouldn't it? How did? How could? Now, could implies possibility. I know you're probably not an English teacher, neither am I, but could is the conditional tense of the English language. So these are not necessarily definite benefits. These are possible benefits. How could doing this before the accident happens have benefited the nursery? How could carrying out, what does carrying out mean? Well, let's go back to our dictionary. Carry out. Meaning, carry out means to perform a task. So how could performing a health and safety inspection, how could doing, implement, conduct, perform, execute, bring about, there's all these different words, fulfill, effectuate, honor. Some of those words don't really work, but are you following me with this? How we dissect this question word for word. In what way could doing health and safety inspections, notice we've got health and safety. It's not just any inspection, because you might have other inspections. It's a nursery, you might have an Ofsted inspection, a government inspection for other things, quality, safeguarding and all that. It's not a health and safety inspection, it's a bit different. It's not an inspection of the boiler, say, or something, or something else, it's not a different type of inspection. So specifically, how could doing health and safety inspections, and the word inspection really does matter as well, because, well, what's not an inspection? Well, it's not an audit. There's a difference between an audit and an inspection. It's not a conversation, it's not a briefing. It's how could doing health and safety inspections specifically. It's not asking you how could doing health and safety stuff benefit the nursery. No, that'll take you off in a wild goose chase somewhere. It's how are you doing the inspections, comma. Why comma? Well, we've got this little bit inserted here, which really matters. Prior to this accident occurring. So in the scenario, there's an accident. Prior, what's the meaning of prior? Now, if you don't speak English very well, because some of the students, some of my students are not from England originally, you're not native language speakers, it's okay for you to not understand a word, that's normal. It means earlier, it means before the accident occurred. Even English people don't always understand the words. Before this accident occurred, prior to this accident, and this accident, there's an accident in the scenario, it's like this one. So it's not asking you how could doing inspections after the accident prevent a reoccurrence. It's asking you prior to this accident, this one specifically being asked. Have benefited. Benefited, right, benefited, which is a positive word. Let's just look at the word benefited. Benefited, meaning, it means something that improves. There's an advantage. To what extent, how could doing health and safety inspections before the accident happened have helped the nursery, have improved the nursery, have given an advantage to the nursery? The nursery is important too. It's not benefiting the manager, or the workers, or the poor soul who was injured. It's benefiting the nursery specifically. Right, all of that really matters. Because any answer which is not within the scope of that question, so for example, it's not in relation to a safety inspection, it's not a benefit, and it's not a benefit to the nursery, anything outside of that scope, it's not going to get marked. Even if it's correct, it's not going to get a mark. And remember the STEM, which says you must support your answer. So when you write out your answer in full in a later step, we are going to have to use evidence from the scenario here. In fact, I would say, regardless of the STEM, always use evidence from the scenario. That's just a good practice, just to guarantee marks just in case for any reason your NEBOSH examiner is not having the best of days. Make sure you give them more than they need to guarantee you get that mark. Because you know, we're all human. So just remember, if you are a full Compassa student, look on the right-hand side and you will see tutorials on all of the command words. You've got what, you've got why, you've got how, you've got comment on, we've got based on the scenario only, got why questions and a few more in there as well. If you are a YouTube student, I'm afraid you don't have access to all of that. But not to worry, you can always sign up for our NEBOSH Rescue Package if you like. Full details in the description below. And then you'll get access to our full exam technique tutorials.